There's a small wooden building on the edge of an old Appalachian farm. Inside, hanging from the rafters, are hams that have been there for almost 2 years. No refrigerator, no power. The temperature swings from freezing in winter to 90 in summer, and the meat is still good. Mountain families fed themselves through the year using a method that costs a few dollars in salt and a stack of firewood. It's been done for thousands of years. It's not banned, it's not hidden. It's just been mostly replaced by the freezer. But it still works exactly the way it always did. Here's how the hill folks preserved meat for up to 2 years without a refrigerator, and the honest safety lines that separate a real country ham from a foodborne illness waiting to happen. To preserve meat, you have to understand what spoils it. 2 things, mostly. Bacteria, which grow on warm, wet meat and turn it bad, and oxidation, which makes fat go rancid over time. The mountain method goes after both. Salt is the workhorse. When you pack meat in salt, it pulls the moisture out of the muscle through osmosis. Bacteria can't grow without water, so as the meat dries and the salt penetrates, the meat becomes hostile territory for the things that want to spoil it. That's the core mechanism that's preserved meat across cultures for thousands of years: Egyptian, Roman, Chinese, European, and Appalachian. None of them invented it. All of them used it. Smoke does 2 more things. First, smoke contains compounds that are themselves antimicrobial. They lay down a protective film on the surface of the meat that further slows bacterial growth. Second, the gentle warmth of a properly run smokehouse continues the drying process, pulling water out of the meat while the smoke does its work. Salt cures from the inside out. Smoke seals the outside. Together, the 2 of them make a piece of meat that can hang in a barn for a year and still be safe and delicious. Here's why this video has the price tag it does. A traditional country ham cure is, at its simplest, salt, sometimes with a little brown sugar, sometimes with a small amount of pink curing salt for safety, which we'll get to. A few pounds of curing salt costs $3 or $4. A bag of brown sugar costs another $2. The pink curing salt is cheap and you use small amounts. The firewood for the smokehouse is whatever hardwood the homestead already had. Hickory was the classic Appalachian choice for hams. So the total cost in materials for curing a single ham was, in modern dollars, about $7. The mountain families weren't tracking it as a line item because the salt was bought once a year and the wood was free, but the math is real. The freezer humming in your kitchen right now costs more in electricity per year than a smokehouse cure costs in materials per ham. The mountain calendar for country ham worked with the seasons, and the seasons weren't optional. Step 1 was butchering in the cold. The hill folks killed hogs in late November or early December, when the outside air was cold enough to keep the meat safe through the days of breaking it down. Cool weather wasn't just preference, it was a safety requirement, because the meat had to stay cold from kill to cure. Step 2 was the salt cure. The fresh hams were packed in salt, sometimes mixed with brown sugar, sometimes with small amounts of nitrite-containing curing salt for safety, and laid in wooden boxes or stoneware crocks in a cold, dry place. The traditional rule of thumb was about 1 day per pound of ham, sometimes longer. A 20-pound ham cured for about 3 weeks. During that time, the salt drew moisture out, penetrated the meat, and rendered it inhospitable to bacteria. Step 3 was the equalization, where the salted ham was rinsed and hung in a cool, dry place for a few weeks, letting the salt content even out through the meat. Step 4 was cold smoking. The ham was hung in a smokehouse, and a low, slow fire of hardwood, usually hickory, was kept burning at the other end. The smoke was cool, not hot. The temperature in the smokehouse stayed low, typically below 90 degrees, for days, sometimes weeks. The meat dried slowly, took on the smoke, and developed the dark mahogany exterior that's the signature of a real country ham. Step 5 was aging. The smoked ham was hung in a smokehouse or aging room and left there for months, sometimes a year or more. The longer it aged, the more flavor developed and the harder and drier it became. A 2-year country ham, properly made, is a thing of remarkable depth, and it's stable at room temperature the whole way through. If this is the kind of mountain knowledge you want more of, our free Appalachian Almanac goes out every Sunday. One real method, sourced and tested, in your inbox. Links in the description. Now, the safety lines, because this is the part that matters most. This is the act of this video that, frankly, the cheerful lost art of curing videos skip. I'm not going to. Botulism is the reason curing recipes call for small amounts of nitrite-containing curing salt, sold as Prague powder number 1 or curing salt number 1 in most stores. Nitrite, in carefully controlled small amounts, prevents the growth of Clostridium botulinum, the bacterium that causes botulism. Salt alone, in many traditional dry cures done in cold conditions, is enough for surface-cured products like a long-aged country ham. But for shorter cures, brines, sausages, and anything where the meat isn't being deeply dried and aged, the nitrite curing salt is genuinely important. Don't substitute it out of a recipe that calls for it. Temperature control is the other non-negotiable. The whole point of butchering in late fall was to keep the meat below 40 degrees from kill through the cure. If you try this in summer in a warm climate without refrigeration, you are inviting exactly the kind of bacterial growth the salt is supposed to prevent, and you may lose. A modern home version of this almost always uses a refrigerator for the cure stage, which is exactly the right move. Smokehouse temperature matters. Cold smoking, the traditional method, keeps the meat in a range too cool to cook it but warm enough to dry. Get the temperature wrong, and you've got either undercooked meat in the danger zone or actual cooked ham that won't keep at room temperature. Modern home smokers and tested recipes give you the temperatures and times. Follow them. Source matters. The Mountain families knew their animals personally. They knew what the hogs had eaten and what condition they were in. If you're doing this with bought meat, sourcing from a trusted local farm matters far more than the cure technique. Trichinella, an old concern with pork, is now rare in modern commercial pork, but still possible in wild game and some home-raised animals, and proper curing protocols address it. But you have to follow the protocols, not improvise. And the honest warning: home-cured meat done wrong has killed people. That's not slop fear-mongering. That's the historical record. Done right, by careful people following tested recipes with the proper curing salts and temperatures, it's one of the safest preserved foods in the world. Done sloppily, it's dangerous. Take the recipes seriously, especially your first time. You don't need a 100-year-old smokehouse to use this method. A modern version, scaled to a home kitchen, looks like this. Start small. The Honest Beginner's Project is home-cured bacon, not a whole ham. A pork belly, a basic cure of salt, sugar, and curing salt number 1 weighed out by a tested recipe. A week in the refrigerator, a rinse and dry, and a few hours in a small home smoker over hickory or apple wood gives you a real, traditional bacon for far less than the grocery store charges, and it teaches you the whole method in one weekend. From there, you can scale up. Hams, hocks, sausages, and dry-cured products are all natural next steps once the bacon method makes sense. There are tested home charcuterie books that will walk you through each one with weights and times. Get one. Use it. The Mountain Method translated for a modern house is not cure a whole hog in your backyard. It's use the same chemistry the haulers used, with modern temperature control and the right curing salt, on a scale that makes sense for your kitchen. That's the honest, safe, real deal version. The reason mountain families could feed themselves through the year wasn't because they had some lost secret. It was because they used the same chemistry humans have used to preserve meat for thousands of years: salt, smoke, time, and cold, with patient, careful attention to the details that made it safe. That work didn't get banned. It got outcompete by the freezer. The freezer is faster, easier, and more forgiving of bad timing. It's also dependent on the power staying on and a chain of grocery stores staying open. The smokehouse, when it was done right, depended on nothing but the seasons, a stack of wood, and the knowledge passed down by someone who had done it before. A country ham hanging in a smokehouse is a kind of bank. It's a year of meals stored up in a way that doesn't ask anything from the grid or the supply chain. The mountain families couldn't afford not to have that bank. We've decided we don't need it. Whether that's a wise decision will depend on what the next decade looks like. Either way, the method works. It's not magic. It's $7 in salt and a stack of firewood, used carefully, the same way it's been used since long before any of us were here. The USDA guidance on home meat curing, the science on nitrites and botulism prevention, and a tested beginner's bacon recipe are all linked in the description. If you want all of these methods organized in one place, with the food safety guidance built in, the Appalachian Way Field Guide has 47 of them with the original sources behind each one. Link below. Real methods, Real sources, real history. That's the Appalachian way. We'll see you Monday.